Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the TCLF One on One series. Through the One on One series, we aim to interact with the best legal professionals and research professionals from India and around the world. Today, we have a very interesting episode on a very interesting theme that is pre-pack insolvencies. And I couldn't be more happy and honored to welcome Mr. Tushar Kumar as a guest for this episode. I've had the honor of working with him during our time together at the university, and I can vouch for the fact that he is one of the most hardworking and intelligent people I've met in the course of my law school journey. Mr. Tushar Kumar is a graduate from the National Law University, Lucknow, and has worked at the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs in the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Research Department. He runs a fantastic blog on insolvency law, and we'll attach the link to that blog. If you're interested, please go ahead and subscribe to the blog. Sir, thank you so much for joining in today.
No, it's my pleasure that you guys invited, and I really hope that through this conversation we can create productive discussion on the pre-packs because it's a very relevant issue right now. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Right, sir. So on that note, as you mentioned that it's something that is being talked about a lot right now. So just to get on with the conversation, can you tell us what exactly is pre-pack insolvency, and what are its benefits, or what are some of its essential points that is making it relevant in the present times?
Right. If I were to say there is no accepted definition of pre-pack per se. So pre-packs is just a practice that has basically evolved over a period of time. If I were to say in the United States of America or in Europe. But
Right.
if I were to give a simplified definition of pre-pack, pre-pack is basically an arrangement wherein the sale of the assets of the corporate debtor, either partial or total, they are negotiated by the corporate debtors, senior creditors, and the prospective buyer. And all of this is coordinated by the insolvency practitioner, of course, which
Right.
in India is the resolution professional, as they say, as per the IBC.
Right.
So that essentially is what a pre-pack is, and all of this happens prior to the initiation of formal insolvency process. So you don't need to trigger whatever formal insolvency process is there in your jurisdiction. Like for India, it's the CIRP,
Right.
which you need to trigger and file. I mean, the respective stakeholder has to file an application in the NCLT to trigger that process.
Right, sir.
And if I were to say the benefits, see, the benefits actually flow from the definition itself.
Right.
So there are basically three tenets on which pre-pack rests on, right? So first is the speed, second is efficiency, and third is confidentiality.
Perfect.
If we are to talk about speed, as I already mentioned, that it's a very speedy process. It happens prior to the initiation of formal insolvency procedure. So
Right.
everything is negotiated off record, but it happens in a very speedy manner, right?
Right.
And by efficiency, I mean that since it happens very quickly and there is no specified timeline to adhere to, by efficiency, I mean that the value of the assets of the corporate debtor, they are not really deteriorated over a period of time. And if the insolvency process prolongs for a period of time, the financial distress also continues for a long time and the value decreases. And if the value of
Right.
the corporate debtor decreases, then there is less payout that is done to the creditors. So
Right.
that jeopardizes the whole process of recovery, or if I were to say the whole process of insolvency resolution per se. So that in that sense, it's very efficient.
Right.
And confident, and by confidentiality, I mean is as per the practice that has evolved in UK and US, it usually happens off record. So the
Right.
negotiations that happen between the corporate debtor, between the senior creditors and the prospective buyer, they happen prior to anything that comes on record. There is no public announcement per se. There is no competitive bidding per se.
Right.
So by that, it is very confidential. It happens off record, and if I mean, I have heard that in the UK it happens really fast. Over the weekend, it's completed. So it's very confidential. Um, but by all of this, I do not make any reference to the model that has been recommended by the subcommittee of ILC in India. That's a very hybrid model, and these benefits can, fluctuate when this model comes into place. So it has the benefits of pre-pack in some essence, but it also has the safeguard mechanisms that have been inserted in the IBC. So it's a hybrid model that has been emphasized by the report. So yeah.
So, like, if I were to put it in very simple terms, it's basically the pre-pack insolvency. It's basically like an opportunity for all the concerned parties, the corporate debtor and the creditors as well, to reach a settlement before the start of the formalized process, or in fact, without even starting the formalized process. It gives you an opportunity to reach a common settlement as to how we want to revive that particular company, right?
Right, right.
Uh, and you've also mentioned about a very important report, and I would recommend all our viewers to go through the report of the Insolvency Law Committee, which has made certain very important observations regarding pre-pack insolvencies. Now, sir, you've also mentioned about the model which UK has adopted. In fact, you very recently written about that model as well in one of your blogs. So, sir, can you tell us more about that? Like, what are the comparatives? Like, if we were to compare the models in India and UK, how would that occur?
Right. If any, reasonable comparison can be made, actually, if pre-pack comes into India, it can be done with the UK only, because, I mean, although pre-packs are prevalent in a lot of countries, in the US also, in the Netherlands also, in the UK also, but the model per se of displacing the existing management, that is common in UK and India, right?
All
I mean, there are certain exceptions which I'm going to tell you about this.
right,
The model which prevailed prior to 2020 in UK was an administration model, wherein if you file for insolvency, the existing management is displaced, and entirely the same is applicable to India as well. I mean, the IBC. So once an
right,
application is admitted, the existing management is displaced. The resolution professional then comes into the picture. He manages and coordinates everything. So in that sense, it's very similar. And by that, I mean that comparisons can be drawn from the UK. But
right,
recently, if you have read about this, the UK government, they passed the Corporate Insolvency and Governance Act in 2020.
right,
And now they are gradually moving towards a debtor in possession model, wherein the debtor will not be displaced. So
right,
now they are gradually focusing towards something and deviating from the administration model. So keeping
right.
this aside, if we talk specifically about pre-pack, in the UK, there is no legislative recognition of pre-packs. So if
All
I were to tell you that I would look into a statute or a regulation, there won't be any definition there, or there won't be any regulation defining what pre-pack is
right,
essentially. And the reason is that their Insolvency Act, which prevailed, which still prevails, is of 1986. And I think post the enactment for 14 to 15 years, this practice evolved. And then later
right.
on, they enacted 2002 Enterprise Act, which gave certain leeway for pre-packs to come into force in the UK, right?
All right,
So as per the practice, if I were to give you a definition in the UK, what happens is the board of directors, they pass a resolution,
right,
and they appoint an insolvency practitioner, and then they negotiate a deal involving the senior creditors. And I'm specifically saying senior creditors because ordinary unsecured creditors are totally left out of the process. they
right,
they are not aware of what is happening. uh, and then this deal is also negotiated with, of course, the prospective buyer, whosoever is willing to come forward and buy the assets of the corporate debtor. When this deal is already negotiated and done with, then they file for initiation I mean, they file for initiation of the administration model in the
right,
court. And as and when the company enters into administration, the deal is done and dusted. It's
right,
executed by the insolvency practitioner as he's appointed as the administrator. So all
right,
of this happens very swiftly, and there is nothing, which can be done to actually jeopardize this process,
right,
right? If I were to talk about it a little bit more, there are two more relevant points in
right,
the UK which are really significant if we were to draw any parallels for India,
right,
which are firstly, their Insolvency Professional Association, they have prescribed a statement of insolvency practice. So
Right.
there are certain guidelines that the insolvency practitioner has to adhere to.
Right.
Now, the irony of these guidelines is that these are not binding.
Right.
So the insolvency practitioner has the freedom to do away with these guidelines. One of the guidelines, and these are very good guidelines actually, if I were to say, and one of the guidelines actually mandate the insolvency practitioner to give a disclosure statement to tell as to what payout is being made to the creditors and how is this justifiable, right? It
Right.
basically talks about you have to justify which course of action you took and why did you take that, right?
Right.
But that is not binding. So that's the irony. And if I were to talk about stats, in 2019, there were 163 pre-pack sales that happened in the UK. And in that, only 28% of those pre-pack sales, the insolvency practitioner gave a disclosure statement. So it's just on paper. It's since it's not binding, it's not in practice. And the another thing which is very relevant is the reference to a pre-pack pool. So
Okay.
I hope you would, I mean, if the readers have, I mean, if the audience, the prospective audience has gone through the report, they would be aware of the term of connected party sales or section 29A of IBC. So there is a
Right.
reference, of course. I would prefer to go into detail into the, I mean, in the later part of this podcast. But what I believe is that in the UK, there is already a growing relevance of connected party sales, right?
Right.
So in 2014, UK constituted a committee there under the chairmanship of Teresa Graham, and that committee report actually instituted a pre-pack pool. That is a pool
Right.
of experienced people
Right.
who will, you know, tell the insolvency practitioner about a deal being made to connected party, whether it is viable or not.
Right.
Right. So the irony of this point also is that until August, I mean, till now as well, this is not binding. So these referrals were also made in the UK. If I were to talk about stats, out of 260 pre-pack sales that happened in 2019, these were made in just 21. It's
Okay.
very handful. So if you could understand, it's entirely on paper. It's not in practice anymore. But the UK passed. I mean, they are in process of enacting regulation. They have released a draft, and by that regulation, this is now mandatory, right?
Right.
So the referral is mandatory. The opinion, if the pool says that we are not agreeing with your sale, then
Right.
it is not binding. The insolvency practitioner still has the leeway to deviate from it,
Right.
right? So if I were to give you know, a gist of all of this is that is what I want to say. In the UK, there is adequate freedom, you know,
Right.
regardless of the criticism that is there in the UK. And so many controversies are there regarding connected party sales, if you are to talk about, or undervaluation, or less payout to ordinary unsecured creditors. Despite that, and despite adequate recognition of all of these issues, there is so much freedom that is granted to the corporate debtor, to the insolvency practitioner, to have this pre-pack in their own way.
Right.
Right. So yeah, I'm sorry, Shashwat. What was the second leg of the question that you asked?
Right. And like, if we were to draw any parallels to India, if
Yeah.
there are any recommended models, what are some key differences?
Yeah. So if I were to say, I mean, to answer this question, I think it's really relevant to look into what the model has been recommended by the subcommittee, right?
Right.
And only then we can talk about drawing parallels. So
Right.
the recent report that the subcommittee of ILC has released, that
Right.
is just you know, that's just a recommendation they have made
Right.
to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, stating that this model of pre-pack can come into place, right?
Right.
And they have given certain a very good directions, I must say, and certain dicey, you know,
Right.
can be called controversial directions as far as the pre-pack can be said.
Right.
So as per the model in India, it involves a lot of I mean, there is a lot of involvement of the courts.
Okay.
So, for the initiation of pre-pack, the board of directors have to pass a resolution. A
Right.
50%, I mean, sorry, the 50% approval from the shareholders have to be given.
Okay.
Then a 50% approval of the unrelated financial creditors has to be given. Then
Right.
this has to be filed with the courts.
Right.
then they will admit the process. Then a
Yes.
moratorium would also come into a picture. And then, of course, the rest of the thing goes along. The
Right.
resolution, the insolvency practitioner is also appointed, although it takes a backstage play. It is not so active, as opposed to the CIRP under IBC. The corporate debtor will stay in place. It won't be displaced as per the pre-pack model that has been recommended in India.
Right.
Uh, and then, if I were to talk about the major part is about the resolution plan, right?
Right.
So the model that has been recommended by the subcommittee, they say that we will allow eligible promoters, to first of all submit a base resolution plan,
Right.
right? Now the catch in this part is that they very swiftly mention eligible promoters, right?
Right.
Now eligible promoters are only eligible if they are able to escape the very wide net of section 29A of IBC,
Right.
right? And section 29A is it's a very long section. It
Right.
runs across 2 pages, 2.5 pages, if I were to say.
Right.
And it bars a lot of people from bidding or becoming a successful resolution applicant,
Right.
right? So if I were to give some context of 29A, like
Right.
previously I was talking about connected party sales. So
Right.
29A talks about that if a person is in some way, has been declared as a bankrupt or is in some way connected to the existing corporate debtor, then
Right.
you are not allowed to bid again, right?
Right.
Because the BLRC, the Indian insolvency regime
Right.
presumes those people to be actually responsible for the present state of the
Of
corporate debtor, and
yeah.
they say that you are not allowed to come again, and bid for these. The assets of the insolvent debtor. Now,
Absolutely.
coming back to the pre-pack model, so the subcommittee has said that only eligible promoters can actually bid.
Right.
They can submit a base resolution plan. Now, these eligible promoters will be very less, first of all.
Right.
Very less who would escape the net of section 29A, right?
Right.
Then the base resolution plan, if such a plan is not submitted by the eligible promoters or there aren't any eligible promoters, then what happens is the creditors will conduct a private bidding process. They will submit this base resolution plan, right?
Right.
And then this base resolution plan would, if it is paying the operational creditors their debts fully,
Right.
and simultaneously it is also agreed by the COC, by the committee of creditors,
Right.
then this plan is accepted. And then of
Right.
course the respective person becomes, the COC, whosoever they have invited in as per their private bidding, that person becomes the successful resolution applicant. But
Right.
I think it's a rarity which is going to happen, that they are going to pay the operational creditors fully.
Right.
So if they're not paying them fully, the operational creditors, then a Swiss challenge has been devised. A Swiss challenge model has been devised by the subcommittee.
Right.
That Swiss challenge model essentially is that that base resolution plan will be, subject to competitive bidding uh, from the market. So anybody can come and challenge that base resolution plan, the value provided in the base resolution plan, right?
Right.
Then a competitive bidding will go on. So the respective person will, challenge the base, the challenger plan, the bid of the base resolution plan. Then that would be called the challenger plan. Then the first party, which can be either the eligible promoters or can be the COC person, whosoever
Right.
they have conducted, then they can challenge it again. So
Right.
this process will carry on for 24-48 hours, right? 24 to 48 hours. Then whosoever exits the process, then that person will become the successful resolution applicant. So
Right.
it's a bit complicated process, if I were to say,
Right.
because in the UK and in the Netherlands, all of this happens off record. So they
Right.
conduct their private bidding, and all of this happens without any legislative or interference of the court. So that. But the benefit in Indian pre-pack is that a moratorium comes into place once a pre-package is initiated. So moratorium
Right.
is that no other creditor can now file for a claim, in a
Right.
court simultaneously while the process is going on. So it
Right.
essentially safeguards the corporate debtor from any such, litigation things that can crop up, and that is all very usual. That can happen in an
Right.
insolvency process. So it safeguards that.
Right.
But the another thing that has to be noticed is that the report says that this plan, accepted plan, would become a plan as per the provisions of IBC, right?
Right.
So if I were to draw certain reasonable presumptions, then I
Right.
think that this would be subject to appeal,
Right.
right? So, and this would be subject to appeal as per section 32 read with 61, and then this
Right.
could go to NCLAT, then of course later on to the Supreme Court. So all
Right.
of this is missing in the UK. You can't appeal a pre-pack. You,
Right.
if any creditor is dissatisfied with the the plan or with resolution, at the
Right.
least they can do, what they can do in UK is that you can subject that practitioner, that insolvency practitioner, to a disciplinary proceeding.
Right.
It won't they won't stall the process of resolution. That pre-pack resolution would be allowed to go ahead. So
Right.
that is it. As far as the subcommittee model is concerned,
Right.
I don't think I'm missing anything significant. I mean, of course, with certain other things that are still there.
Right.
Section 29A is still applicable, and yeah. So this is
Right.
in essence the model that has been recommended by the subcommittee as per the recent report that came out
Right.
in January.
Right, sir. That was quite an insightful answer. You've covered the British or the UK model in its entirety, and you've also talked about the recommended Indian model, highlighting some of the essential features and differences between the two. Now, as per my understanding from your answer, what I can see is that in UK, as far as pre-pack insolvencies are concerned, there is a lot of freedom that has been granted to the parties and the professionals as well. However, in India, there is a lot of involvement of the courts. Firstly, thereby having some consequences on that freedom, and because of the involvement of courts and the procedures you've mentioned, the process also becomes very cumbersome and formalized in nature. Uh, so these were, I think, the essential differences or the major points that you talked about in the very brief manner. Now, we've also talked about Section 29A and the question around related parties. And I just had a very, very small question with regards to that. Now, if I were to ask for your personal opinion, from your, research and from your understanding of these issues, uh, as we all know that the Indian, Insolvency Committee report has suggested that Section 29A should not apply, to pre-pack insolvencies. They've also made this recommendation that it should not apply in case of pre-pack insolvencies. Where do you stand on this issue? Is
Right.
your personal
Uh,
opinion?
Yeah, right. So I'm sorry for correcting you on this, but just the subcommittee, some members of the subcommittee, they deferred. I mean, they had a difference of opinion. They wanted
Right,
29AC to be relaxed, but
right,
then finally, what they've come out is that Section 29A would be applicable to pre-packs, right?
right. It
So
was a
there would
dissenting
be,
opinion.
yeah. So certain members, they have expressed their dissent,
Right,
but overall they came out that their overall consensus is being on the fact that 29A would apply in entirety to
right,
PPACs.
right,
So if I were to give a gist, as I previously mentioned, a term, connected party sales. So
right,
I would just go into the brief of what exactly
right,
is the history of insolvency laws. So in the
right,
UK, as the system has evolved, they think that the person who is actually running the enterprise, the insolvent
right,
debtor, those people are responsible for the insolvency. For the subsequent insolvency.
right,
Even if those people are not responsible, even if it has happened due to market forces, or even if
right,
it has happened to a force majeure event like COVID presently. So irrespective of anything, the history has evolved in such a way that the people thought that the person presently running the incumbent management that is presently running the corporate debtor, these people are actually responsible for insolvency, and hence they should be displaced, right?
Right.
uh, and the other reason was that these people, they would have sensitive information pertaining to the corporate debtor. So once they come again, circumvent their route, they come again to buy this insolvent debtor, they would buy it at a very low price,
Right.
and this would lead to undervaluation in insolvency resolution, which is not good, for the payout to the creditors. The creditors would be paid very less. So that is
Right.
one concern which pertains in the UK also, as far as connected party sales is concerned, and in India also, right?
Right.
So initially, 29A came. I mean, 29A in India came out in I think 2018, as per
Right.
a committee recommendation. This was amended. The IBC was amended later on, and 29A is a huge net, of
Right.
people, making them ineligible. It's a list of
Right.
people. There, these can be promoters. Then there are undischarged insolvent. If you are a willful defaulter, if you have been classified as criminal, I mean, adjudged as a criminal. I'm sorry. So that's a very huge list. These people, they cannot,
Right.
come and bid for the assets. So
Right.
any applicant which bids for the process has to give an affidavit that I am
Right.
eligible as per 29A. If
Right.
that affidavit is not there, then you are not, certainly not eligible, right? So as
Right.
far as pre-pack goes, in the UK, of course, in pre-pack there is nothing on record. So 29A is also not there.
Right.
29A in the UK is not there even in their formal insolvency process. Like
Right.
it is there in Indian IBC, it's not there in the formal, in their administration model, or now their model recommended by CIGA,
Right.
the Corporate Insolvency Governance Act. But what is, of worthy observation is the
Right.
fact that these connected party sales are one of the basic, termite which is actually plaguing the pre-pack system in the UK,
Right.
and they have adequately recognized this. It's a most funny part, because when the Teresa Graham committee report came out in 2014,
Right.
that report explicitly said that connected party sales is one of the drawbacks of pre-pack,
Right.
and then only they recommended this, pool of experienced people to whom such reference should be made, so that they could give their opinion and certain authenticity could be granted. But Sorry, yeah. So
Right.
and also, if I were to talk about certain stats, I think almost presently also, a lot of these pre-pack sales in UK are to connected parties,
Right.
and they do not actually mind it. And amongst all of those connected party sales, almost one third of these sales are undervalued. They are
Right.
less than the market price. They're significantly lower than the market price. So that is
Right.
the drawback, as far as the connected party sales is concerned. Now,
Right.
what I think, as per the model applicable to, I mean, the model recommended by the subcommittee, these
Right.
things are not of much relevance, is what I think,
Right.
because for two reasons. The basic reason which raises an area of concern as far as connected party is of undervaluation. That cannot
Right.
exist. I don't think there is any reason for this to exist in the present model,
Correct.
because even if 29A is not applicable, and the base
Right.
resolution plan is submitted by some promoter who has actually caused the insolvency of the corporate debtor, right? And if
Right.
he submits it at a very low plan, I mean, at a very low price,
Correct.
and does not pay out, or is not approved, that plan is not approved by the COC, then it would be
Right.
subject to a challenge
Right.
to the market participants. They would actually, to take into account as to what is the value, the real value of
Right.
the corporate debtor, and they would keep on fighting for this. They would keep on. This would be a competitive process, the Swiss challenge model,
Right.
and this would go on till one party exits the process, right? And then a final applicant would be decided, right? So
Right.
since it would be subjected to bidding, it won't be at such an undervalue as is prevalent in the UK, because there is
Right.
no competitive bidding there. It's
Right.
just one person coming up, whosoever he is. It can be a promoter. He can, debt for equity swap. They can give the creditors shares in the new corporation. It can be a shell corporation. It can be a very undervalued transaction, but there is
Right.
no check and balance mechanism at all.
Right.
So that there, of course, there is a area of concern. But in India, I think there are very less chances because then, of course, when this plan is all accepted, then the NCLT, this plan will go to NCLT. Then the
Right.
NCLT will give an approval, right?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
NCLT will also look into the fact that there are safeguards for operational creditors. There is a certain safeguard that is there for operational creditors under Section 30, subsection 2, clause B of
Right.
IBC, which talks about minimum payout that has to be paid to operational creditors. So
Right.
NCLT will look into that also at that time.
Right.
So there, it is a foolproof process. You know what I mean? Is that
Right.
so? 29A is, in my opinion, is of a bit less relevance when it comes to pre-pack, because then there is no freedom, right?
Right.
If promoters have actually caused the insolvency, then they should be, given certain amount of discretion to come again and then revive it. And
Right.
a very accepted and a very common criticism that is there, if you look up and search of, I mean, for 29A, is that it of course reduces the ambit of potential bidders.
Right.
You are making a lot of eligible, I mean, not eligible, but willing.
Disqualifications,
um,
basically.
yeah, the
Yeah.
disqualification net is making a lot of willing bidders ineligible. So even if they want
Right.
to for a good price, they won't be able to.
Right.
So that is there. I think 29A, what the members of the committee expressed a dissent on was for a specific clause, that is 29AC, which
Yeah.
says that if a person has an account, or if he manages any account of corporate debtor that has been classified as a non-performing asset, an NPA,
Right.
as per the
Right.
RBI guidelines, for at least a year, then he is, not allowed to bid for the enterprise. So some members had said, uh, uh, and they had expressed their dissent on this issue only, stating that this should be relaxed.
Right.
And the reason was that now for a year IBC had been suspended, right?
Right.
So what if an account was classified as an NPA in March, or
Right.
let's say on 20th March 2020 it was classified as an NPA, and
Right.
then now IBC has been resumed. So
Right.
in April, or if in May or June, July, if the process happens, then that person would be ineligible,
Correct.
and for a cause which is not entirely within his own hands.
Correct.
But the other members of the committee, they said that this is not, it's not irremediable. It can be remedied. So if a person
Right.
has an account which is an NPA, you can pay that debt off, and then you can come out of the net of NPA, right?
Right.
And then you become an eligible a bidder, resolution applicant you can be.
Right.
So that is there. What I think is that instead of applying Section 29A,
Right.
what India, I mean, may do, or the MCA can think about, is there
Right.
was a certain discussion on this issue as well in the report.
Right.
If you are to see that, was a reference which is made to the experienced pool of people which is there in the UK.
Correct.
Now, how we can optimize that is that we can make this opinion binding on the process, right?
Right.
So what happens presently in the UK is, if there is a connected party sale,
Right.
the regulations that have recently come into force, which will be applicable, I think, from July or August, they say
Right.
that if any connected party sale is happening, then the IP, the insolvency practitioner, has to mandatory do either of the two things. One is
Right.
that either he has to take an opinion from the creditor, I mean, approval from the creditors, or he has to make a reference to the experienced pool of people, right?
Right.
This is mandatory now. Either of these two courses of action have to be taken by the IP, right?
Right.
Now, the funny part is that once this referral is made and the pool says, no, this deal is, not viable in their opinion, then the IP
Right.
can very validly deviate from their opinion, and he can write a statement that my reasons are these, right?
Right.
Instead of this, we can make this referral mandatory.
Right.
And there can be a pool of experience, pool of people who can be referred to, who can give their opinion on market practices, what exactly is the value of the enterprise, and if it is being sold at a low value or if it has been overvalued.
Right.
So accordingly they can give their opinion and that can be binding. So I think that could be a good thing to actually look into. If
Right.
29A is applicable, then I think it's essentially IBC then, because
Right.
NCLT is also being involved at the initiation stage, at the approval stage.
Right.
Then 29A is also applicable.
Right.
There is no freedom also for other good amount of bidders to come into picture to actually
Right.
bid for a this thing. So I think 29, yeah, a good alternative can be a referral to an independent pool, which was also discussed by the committee in the report. That
Right.
can be done, and the opinion can be binding, so as to make sure that this whole model is optimized per se, and
Right.
it's not just on paper. It's something that exists in practice, is what I think.
Right. And I would have to concur with that, I think, opinion that if you were to grant a freedom to a process, if in fact the benefits of a process are essentially based upon its freedom, then there is no point of, placing these nets and placing these wide net of disqualifications over that very process so as to cut down its very freedom. So I would have to concur to that opinion. Now, coming to the final part of the conversation, sir, I have a two-pronged question. First, if a formalized pre-pack insolvency regime was to be enacted in India, how would it interact with some of the other provisions of the IBC? If you were to mention, some of the very brief points. And lastly, like where do you think the future lies? Can you see a formalized pre-pack insolvency regime coming into place in the near future?
Right. I think, as per the report, the subcommittee has said that we would amend the code by an ordinance, right?
Right,
And then all the specification would be specified by regulations.
right,
IBBI would come out with regulations. If this has to come, if this were to come into the picture, actually, if pre-pack is coming into the Indian insolvency regime, then only, of course.
mhm,
So what I think that code amending, I mean, there are a lot of things which are which are deviating, from the
right,
IBC, which is essentially if you want to trigger an IBC process, it happens by a section 7, 9, or 10 application,
then, right,
right? But here it's happening by a simple majority of unrelated financial creditors and shareholder approval, and then they're
right,
going to NCLT. So I think if the code is to be amended, they would probably, insert a provision stating that, granting some recognition to pre-pack, some freedom
right,
that this can happen, right? The board of
right,
directors or the shareholders can go for this, the corporate debtor can go for this, and then the specifications would be specified in the regulations per se.
right,
What I mean is, if you were to amend the code, then it would be, an unnecessary confusion also, because as per the pre-pack, they say that COC can approve the plan by 66%, but they can
right,
push it into liquidation by 75%, which does
right,
not happen in IBC. IBC is 66% approval. If it does not happen, then the process, I mean, then they keep on, evaluating plans. The company is finally pushed into liquidation later on, if by the
right,
NCLT, if the process fails. So that is how it differs. The
right,
interplay of IBC and pre-pack is a bit different. So I think that would be specified by the regulations. One very significant point that was specified by the subcommittee was that we would specify, major things through legislative instruments, which can be by
right,
regulations or the provisions in the code. But then a lot of informal things would be left to market practices, right?
right,
And I think by that, what they mean is that it would be flexible, because
right,
pre-pack is all about flexibility. If there is no flexibility, then it's not pre-pack. That also, I think that is a very good point actually to be noted. So if not all things, not all recommendations are actually embodied as regulations, then I think pre-pack is a good thing to actually look forward to in the Indian insolvency regime.
right,
But otherwise, then I don't think if they've specified the whole process here on in the committee report itself, and with the all the safeguards, the appeal provisions, everything is there, of course. And if all of this comes into place through regulations, it would be very dicey to see how this comes about, because as I said,
Right.
NCLT initially approves for initiation. So if there is pending, if NCLT does not approve it, the initiation of pre-pack, what would happen then? At the
Right.
first stage, it would lead to delays. We have already seen how NCLT has unnecessarily interfered in the IBC process also.
Right.
For application initiation applications filed by financial creditors, operation creditors, they take into account, certain extraneous circumstances to adjudicate those applications which are actually not required, and that leads
Right.
to delays. Those people appeal to NCLT, then to Supreme Court, so that keeps on increasing the barriers. So that is one thing. And how quickly can they come up with is I think what the ministry actually thought before constituting this report, and I mean constituting this committee and quickly coming out with this report, was the fact that we are presently we're still going through a global pandemic, right?
Right.
So there have to be certain debtor friendly provisions,
Right.
and those provisions are pre-packed, right? So pre-packed is a pro debtor friendly
Right.
model. It does not displace the debtor, right? So
Right.
right now, whatever distress is there, I mean, most of the distress that is there in the market is not because the current management is mismanaging or something of that sort. It is because of the
Right.
reduction of demand. People
Right.
who had not been going out, they have not been buying, either because of
Of
preventive
course.
measures, social distancing measures. So that
Right.
is not their fault, the incumbent
Right.
management, and hence it's a data friendly model that the government thought that the pre-pack, we can come up with pre-packs, and we can implement this.
Yeah.
I think I'm not really sure if the ministry is very optimistic to implementing this quickly. I
Yeah.
think this will take maybe some time, but
Right.
in the interim, I think what if I were to say a debtor friendly model, then this is another, if I were to say there is no freedom per se. It's a different framework of insolvency that has been defined, right?
Right.
So this will also evolve with practice. So that is what the catch is. And as we have seen in other countries, they did not think about enacting pre-packs per se, that suddenly they think that there is distress in the market and we should come
Right.
up with a legislative enactment recognizing pre-packs. No, that there was
Yeah.
just a practice that has been evolved for probably 19 to 20 years,
Right.
and they had been witnessing that people are not entering into formal insolvency. They are
Right.
going off record. They are
Right.
settling their disputes, or they're settling their claims with the creditors, senior creditors, and they're making certain schemes of arrangement. They are causing the resolution of the company. So this should be given certain legislative enactment or
Right.
a certain discretion. But in India, I
Basically,
don't
a
think that's
practice
really
was
happening.
given legal recognition.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So in the UK, it's all that it has evolved over time. Now I
Right.
don't think India, I mean, there has not been a considerable time that has passed since the enactment of IBC
Right.
became a law since 2017, and
Right.
the process is still evolving. The framework of IBC is
Absolutely.
still evolving. So at that time, if you were to come into a new framework of pre-packs per se, it would be a bit problematic, I would say, because it would then, incur an additional burden on the stakeholders to be very aware with this pre-pack process also. I mean, what this model is, and then where can it be subject to abuse? It can be subject to certain
Right.
litigation or not. So that is the part. I think if government is coming, is really optimistic in coming up with pre-pack, it's a good thing. I'm really looking forward to it, and I really hope that they take into account that discretion and freedom has to be there. If
Right.
it's actually a debtor friendly measure, it should
Right.
not be, injuncted with so many safeguards so as to ensure that the creditors are not being abused of, or let's say other undervaluation or other things are happening. So
Right.
that is one thing. Another thing is that the government can also look into the other schemes that are there in the Indian insolvency framework. So the
Right.
Companies Act, there is a scheme of arrangement that can be entered into
Right.
by the companies. So that is something that has been rarely used by corporations.
Right.
And by usage, I mean debt restructuring, not shareholders or
Absolutely.
other form of restructuring, but debt restructuring for paying out the creditors per se. And by that, why it has been rarely used is there are a lot of reasons. There are no classes of creditors that have been defined. So
Right.
operational and financial creditors does not exist there. That
Right.
have to be done by NCLT. Then the NCLT can also look into whether it's fair or not. So I think that process can be optimized. You know, the
Right.
scheme of arrangement things. It's a debtor-friendly measure, of course. The debtor is not removed in
Right.
that, and a moratorium does not come into place, which can also be looked into. But I think instead of coming up with an entirely separate thing, which as per the timeline that they have suggested in the model is going to take 90 to 120 days, I mean within
Right.
120 days. So that is also in itself a lot of, a time framework that is there. I won't compare this with UK or US because that happens there it happens in 2 3 days, and we
Right.
shouldn't make any draw any comparisons because of course that it's a very mature insolvency framework, mature
Yeah.
insolvency regime, and India has just come into the picture. So I
Right.
think the existing regime should be optimized rather than looking into certain entire a bit different models, like pre-pack, because that would require sensitization as well. Stakeholders
Right.
need to be adequately aware about
Right.
the new things. It would be subject to abuse, and by sensitization, I also mean the members of the NCLT need to be aware. So
Right.
they are the people who are actually adjudicating this thing. They need to be accordingly trained. They need to be informed what pre-pack is happening and when it is happening.
Right.
Also, one important point that I missed, and one thing that I want to make as a recommendation is so this pre-pack, it actually, I mean, when I said that this happens, that the corporate debtor or the, I mean, 50% shareholder approval and a 50% unrelated financial creditor approval is there. This happens on a default. So if the
Right.
corporate debtor has not paid one claim or has
Right.
willfully defaulted, irrespective of that, then only this thing happens. So then only you can go for pre-packs. The shareholder approval has to be there, and then. So I think on this front, what one thing I can say is that in the European Union, the EC has come up. I think in 2017 or 16 they came up with this directive. It's a
Right.
preventive restructuring directive. So it's a pre-insolvency mechanism. So that
Right.
says about how you handle distress, prior to entering into insolvency. It's a very comprehensive thing. It's
Right.
not pre-packs. So pre-packs is off record, going completely off record, right? And
Right.
India has done I would say India has done a hybrid of pre-packs and pre-insolvency. So in
Right.
that, the European Commission has recommended a lot of things. They said that you can enter into pre-insolvency even, I mean, very prior to actually the stress is occurring.
Right.
So if there is a slight chance you can enter into this model, then there is a proper model that they have devised, right?
Right.
So I think uh, if you were to take guidance from that, that there is a very comprehensive model that was devised by European Commission. That was something which is happening pre-insolvency, right? There
Right.
are no defaults per se. It's happening prior to the stress. So now if
Right.
pre-pax is happening on default, I mean, if the corporate debtor is willfully defaulting or is otherwise also defaulting, then I
Right.
think it's a bit late that this thing is happening. So it has to be done very quickly, and
Right.
time has to be emphasized more rather than looking into safeguards. So
Right.
one other thing that is there is that once pre-pack is there, the creditor cannot initiate IBC regime. So they cannot
Right.
go to the NCLT and say, okay, no, we are backing out now. Now we
Right.
want CIRP to begin with. So no, they can't say this because the committee has said that there can be no simultaneous two processes.
Right.
So once pre-pack is there, the CIRP would also abate all of these. I mean, nothing of that sort can start. So that is also to be looked into. I think it's a very sophisticated thing moving forward if the MC has to look into, and I
Right.
think they would make an optimum decision. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and even if this is enacted, or if this is this has come into the picture later on, maybe 6-7 months later on. I think this model would then be subject to amendments. As
Right.
you've seen in IBC, you would know since 2017 there have been numerous amendments, and that have
Right.
been a result of consequent litigation and requests being made by practitioners or requests being made by the business debtors or anything. So they
Right.
have taken into account stakeholder review, and then they have come up with certain amendments. So I think the MCA would also be very open to the idea of amending it later on. So I think I really hope that this comes out to be a good thing for debtors which have been facing continuous stress during COVID times.
Well, thank you so much for that excellent insight, sir. And thank you so much for this insightful conversation. You've dealt with a very complex procedure, and something which has a lot of literature, and something which has a lot of different practices all over the world in a very beautiful manner. So, sir, it was an honor to host you, and thank you so much once again.
All right, thank you so much, Ashwat. It was a good conversation with you. And thank you for inviting me. I think the TCLF has been doing good work, and I look forward to other podcasts as well in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.